Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're having a very good day or night. Today's video, I want to cover a bit on the topic of best in slot teammates in HSR as of the current day, right? Now, if you guys don't know a little bit of the discussion that's been going around the past few weeks, Pridewin recently updated their tier list, and someone took a screenshot and made a post of it on Twitter, showing the downfall of HSR team building, basically, in which everybody or almost everybody in these top tiers had a partner tag. Partner tag Pridewin made to indicate that without a certain best in slot partner or partners, this character falls off immensely and is nowhere near the performance that they could achieve in said optimal team outside of not having the teammates, right? So they created the partner tag, I think, at the beginning or midway through 3.x. However, this has now been removed. Over here in the change log, I believe if we go, wait, where is it? We have the break archetype, pure fiction changes. I swear, oh yeah, right here. Lastly, we are also making one final change alongside Asheville, and that is the removal of the partner tag. It was originally designed to flag characters that required other characters to achieve their optimal performance. However, in the current state of HSR, this is simply way too common. So basically, the TLDR of this is that because it's now just a common thing for characters to be incredibly reliant on a few other characters, there's no point in really having a tag for it, since it basically applies to absolutely everybody in the game. And this is kinda sad to see, right? Now I understand, here's the thing, right? At the beginning of every gacha game, they're only starting to build teams. They're only starting to build archetypes. And so this is why almost always, the first 1 or 2 years of a gacha game, you don't have this issue of incredibly niche supports, because they're still trying to create characters to fill in the multiple roles that haven't been filled in yet, right? However, once that happens, once all of that finally finishes, is usually when you end up in a situation like we currently are with 3.x and now 4.x. They have filled in support roles for basically every single type of damage and playstyle in the game. So now it's simply a matter of power creeping the older support roles to still continue selling people these new teams and new characters. So in my opinion, this really started in V3. You could see the building blocks towards more niche DPSs from version 2 as well. You have Sparkle introducing the skill point gen gimmick, right? You have Acheron having the nihility restriction and wanting nihilities to debuff for faster stacking. You had the introduction of a new type of damage in Super Break, which was obviously for the Super Break DPSs like Firefly, Boot Hill, and Rappa. However, even then, you could consider some of these characters general, like for example, Robin is made for follow-up, but Robin was so generally good and strong that she was the best character to use for 0 cycles for the entirety of version 2 across basically every single team in the game, right? On top of this, you had, let's say, Blade. I believe Blade used to be half HP scaling, half attack scaling. So even though back then you didn't have an HP scaling Hyoscene sustain, you didn't have a Tribi with as strong general amp, because he had the ability to still run on attack stuff, he was still decent. Not great, but he was decent and able to semi-synergize with some other supports who aren't HP scaling at all. This same thing applies to Ruan Mei, right? Ruan Mei was seemingly built up and created to end up being a best in slot support for the Super Break teams. However, most would know, she has like a conflicting kit that is also generalist, like for example giving stuff like damage boost, which does not work with break damage. So back in like early V1 and even V2, you could see a lot of characters were not really being made in mind with only fulfilling one niche, right? They were fulfilling multiple roles at once. Now, they wouldn't be massively best in slot in said roles as compared to a lot of the newer niche characters that we are getting in this game. However, they still accomplished what they had to and had a lot more value on them because of their more generalist capability. You could substitute certain characters that weren't best in slot and it would still work decently well. However, as of current day, this is no longer the case, right? You look at characters like Sparksy and Silverwolf, these characters fall off an absolute cliff without Yao Guang. It is larger of a damage loss than removing Cyrene from like Monorem Evernight hypercarry teams or even the Cassie hypercarry teams, right? Despite how strong Cyrene is in some of her top teams where she has the most synergy possible, it still doesn't even compare to, let's say, the likes of Yao Guang and how much some of these Elation DPSs are going to be relying on Yao Guang. And then you also have like Hyacine, right? Everybody knows it. If you try to play multiple HP scaling DPSs in this game at the same time on the same team, it is torturous because there's no one who can compare to Hyacine as an HP scaling sustain for any other HP scaler in the game, right? So the fact that you have to choose which team gets her, and then the other one, you know, you can't do anything about it being massively nerfed by not having a second Hyacine, is frustrating. And this is just the norm. Dot obviously has Kafka and is super reliant on Kafka. You have Evernight, who is incredibly reliant on RMC and as well as Cyrene. You have Archer, incredibly reliant on Buff Sparkle, especially for his optimal performance. You have Firefly. She obviously really needs Dahlia if you want to be able to get this performance. You have Sparksy, incredibly reliant on Yao Guang and Buff Sparkle for her hyper carry. You have Anaxa, incredibly reliant on Cyrene and especially the Cyrene Saridra combo. You have Mayday, once again incredibly reliant on Cyrene. Phanon is arguably the only fucking DPS in this entire list who you can argue doesn't need a partner tag, right? Because even though, as of current, he has an undisputable best in slot in Saridra, the jump isn't so significant to where you can be like, yeah, he needs Saridra for this. Phanon is much more of a E2 merchant than he is a teammate merchant. So if you prioritize his own vertical investment, you can easily get away with using like Buff, Sparkle, and Sunday together with him on the same team, and it'll still perform incredibly well against the endgame content. Yes, the Cyrene Saridra combo will likely be better, however, not by a very noticeable amount, which is what really matters when you're giving people things like the partner tag in this game, right? So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. What do you guys think about the game, you know, creating much more niche archetypes and niche characters down the line in comparison to the more general ones that they released at the beginning of the game? Once again, it's understandable. I understand it. At the beginning of a game, you're getting the building blocks down and you can't really afford to be already going all out on niche teams and archetypes like we currently are from what I'd say confidently V3 and onwards. However, I do wish there was just a little bit more of a mix, right? Like, give us a few more Phanons in a version, right? Give us a few more Ruaimeis. Now, it's hard to say, because at the same time, this community is incredibly doomer when it comes to characters who aren't perfectly synergistic with others, right? We currently live in a reality where people will say Yao Guang, despite being just a massive best in slot for Silverwolf by a mile will get replaced despite having literally perfect synergy with her, just because they believe so from surface level pattern recognition with Cassie's team, right? So it's like a lose-lose situation for HSR. If you make characters general and also niche mix, like you kind of did in 1.x and 2.x, you're gonna get people who are constantly dooming these characters and waiting for fucking forever to pull them because they're confident they're gonna get power crept for not being completely synergistic. And then if you do make characters completely synergistic towards one type of niche instead of making them more generally usable, a lot of players end up being disappointed. Maybe that leads to less sales because that character doesn't work with the other characters that they like that is on their account. It's a lot. I'm not Hoyo, right? I'm not Hoyo. I don't at all know the statistics on how all of this shit affects their sales. However, as a player, I'm just gonna say it, I love my Ruan Mays, right? I loved my Robins. I loved the characters who were best in slot for a niche, but didn't only, have value in said niche. They had value outside of it. Characters like that are just absolutely amazing, and in my opinion, age almost timelessly. You guys are free to have your own opinions on this and disagree with me. However, I do wish we had much more of like a 2.x-esque HSR meta in comparison to the type of meta and team building that we have in today's age of like V3 and early V4. Love you all. Hope you have a great day. Hope you all have a great night. Peace out.